Not seeing where I could change this. Might need to end the call and come right back.
You might at least need to stop the stream and restart it.
Yeah, I don't see a place to stop it here though.
You're live. You're live. We're good. We're good.
Oh, we're live? Okay. Hey, we're good. Fantastic. We're just a little bit behind. Okay.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody. What's going on? I think there have been some issues with Amazon AWS today and a few other things. So Jay, you and I are just going to crack at it. We're going to go, and this will be here available as a replay. I'll clean up the beginning and post edit later, and then we'll go from there. Cool. So today we are talking about, actually, let me share my slides with y'all. This is great. Always fun to have. It's not a presentation unless there's technicals, right?
Gotta be.
All right. So today, with our third installment of Open Circle, we're launching and marketing a paid community. I know this is ultimately where a lot of you want to go. We will be discussing free and then all the different types of different paid communities, because there isn't just one type that you could do. If you weren't here with us before, in September, we did Open Circle #1, where we talked about how to build a successful online community. It was a great introductory program. We're going to discuss a few of those things again today to sort of build that foundation and come off of that as far as we get into the paid community stuff. And then recently, Jillian joined us for a really great presentation on how to create the most engaging community. And the links for each of these presentations are, in fact, in the description. If you're all in on community, especially for 2022, I know a lot of you are, I would highly recommend you go back and watch #1, #2, and of course, here you are for #3. It doesn't really matter what order you get them at, but it's really, really important that you have these foundational items with you as you move into 2022 and really start focusing on building something special here. So here's what we're covering today. Today, we're going to cover launch strategy. Really important. How do we actually share this thing with the world? How do we create it and put it out there? #2, Jay is going to go pretty heavy into pricing. We're going to all tag team on this stuff together, but pricing is very important. Pricing can oftentimes lead people to decision fatigue and just have them not make any decisions at all. So there's a lot of different ways to approach pricing, which Jay will get into. We also at Team SPI, we implement an application when we have people join our community, SPI Pro. That's not necessary, but it can be beneficial. There are pros and cons to all of these things, and having an application can do wonderful things as we set things up for your community, but it can also stop a few things that you might want to include in your community as well. #4, onboarding. We're going to always talk about onboarding because it is, no matter what, one of the most important aspects of building a community, setting everybody off on the right foot, providing that experience up front to have people realize that they're in the right spot and to have them not get lost. It can feel very overwhelming to become a new member for a community, and we've got a lot of things to cover in and around that. But first, a quick introduction to ourselves. If you don't know who we are, my name is Pat Flynn, founder and creator and head of growth at Team SPI, and a lot of you know me from way back in 2008 when I started this thing. A lot of you have just recently discovered me here on YouTube and other places, so very, very happy that you're here. Thankful for your time today. And we have Jay. Jay has a lot more experience, in fact, with community than I do. Jay, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you have to offer.
Yeah, I lead the community experience team here at SPI alongside Jillian B, Tony, Known. If you are in the Academy or SPI Pro, you know those names very, very well. We have an incredibly talented team here that do a lot of great work in both of our communities, the SPI Academy and SPI Pro. So I just have the pleasure of helping steer the team a little bit there, and have been here since the beginning of Pro back in July of last year.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of work over the last year and a half. So excited to share the fruits of some of that labor and some of the things that we've learned the hard way here today.
And that's what we always do at SPI. We experiment. We love taking that first step to try something new. Obviously, we're not the first to build a community online, but we definitely want to be the best at sharing the information about what has worked and what has not. And we cannot wait to see what comes out of this. Already a lot of people making decisions after Open Circle 1 and Open Circle 2 to benefit their own communities and start their own. We're really excited to see how you take the information today about launching and marketing a community and move it forward into what you have going on. So the big question that a lot of people want to know is, well, when should we launch a paid community? Now, before we answer that question, I want to just talk a little bit about the things we talked about back in Open Circle #1, which is well, what is community? And Jay, I brought some slides in from your presentation then, because it was really helpful to really set the foundation here. And a lot of us have experienced and are experiencing sort of this level of creation, right? We are the creator. We're creating things. We're providing information, education, inspiration. And it's very much a, from us to them sort of situation, right? It's not really any communication at all. And yes, there can be comments on certain places. There can be, feedback, and there can be some interaction, but generally speaking, it's more of, us kind of speaking. When you're starting out, you're trying to reach a lot of people. You're not necessarily sure about what your voice is or what it is you're talking about specifically, but over time you become curator. And this is a really special time when people start to know you for certain things. They start to understand the kinds of things you have to offer or what sets you apart from others. And they continue to come to you and they continue to maybe engage with you more. But this doesn't necessarily mean you have a community yet. It still very much is a you talking to them and a them talking to you situation. But to me, magic really happens is when you start to turn this into a more of a community building situation. So when you are the community builder, you are somebody who can create all these little connections and facilitate these interactions, whether it's in person or online or in a free platform or in a paid platform. These interactions, these connections are really what make community special, right? I think a lot of people confuse community with just like a fancy broadcasting channel, and it's definitely not that. You can use community to broadcast things, obviously make announcements and things like that. We see this on platforms like Discord a lot, where you see the creator sharing a lot of announcements, but it still might not even feel like a community at that point, because it's the interaction. It's those arrows that are pointing from not just you to them, but them to each other that really makes this special. Community is really about, and the value comes from the other members, just the members themselves. And this is why I love paid communities, especially because that sort of pay threshold allows you to filter and bring the right people together. It's not to say free communities cannot be successful either, but there's just something special about paid communities, which we'll get into for sure. Community is about human connection, right? We are all humans when it comes down to it. And there is an inherent need for all of us humans to want to connect with each other, to find our people, right? And not just our people, not just like find another human, but another human who gets us, another human who might be going through the same kinds of things, another human who maybe has gone through those kinds of things who can help support, or another human who maybe is behind you a little bit, who you can support too. This is, again, these interactions and facilitation of that is where success and community comes from. Transformation, to go from one thing or one person or one kind of human to another as a result of being connected with these people. We see this in a lot of different places. And yes, transformation can happen without the community. But as you all know, like if you're going to go work out, I mean, it's the end of the year here, Jay. I don't know what your resolutions are, but I know a common resolution for me is to, start working out or start running more or any of those kinds of things. And I always know, and you know this too, it's always so much easier when there are other people doing it with you. Absolutely. Whether that is because you don't want to let them down, whether it's because they are there to help lift you up. Transformation really happens in an amazing way when it comes with other people involved. And no, it doesn't just have to be weight gain or weight loss or more muscle or anything like that. Transformation can happen in all different kinds of realms. Jay, what are some communities that you're a part of where you've experienced transformations in one way or another?
Yeah, a big one that comes to mind was my initial experience with Alt MBA, Seth Godin's cohort-based course community. Transformation is a huge part of that experience, because you come in and you think you have a certain way of thinking and solving problems, and really that whole program is about changing the way that you approach and solve problems. So that was a big one for me. But I see this a lot in our course communities around our boot camps, our version of cohort-based courses. That is the whole goal of our boot camp community, is to assist in the transformation that we're promising through those courses.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And beyond transformation, you have a sense of identity. And the cool thing about having community and identity work together is that there are now other people you can identify with, right? It's going to the baseball game and your team's down by 3 in the final inning and your team hits a grand slam home run. You can high five, you can hug and cheers people around you who you don't even know, simply because you're on the same spot, you're cheering for the same team, you're all wearing the same colored ball cap. And that's so cool. And again, it doesn't have to be a sports team or anything like that for identity to happen. I've been seeing this with my sort of side gig over at my Pokemon YouTube channel, where we have a sense of the fact that, okay, we're the weird ones. We're the weird ones that are adults who collect Pokemon cards, just literally cartoons on cardboard. Yet together, we're all in it with each other, and we could be weird together, right? And that makes us feel really great. And we can identify as a Pokemon card collector or a Pokemon card investor or a fan of a certain person or a certain type of Pokemon, right? And it's really interesting because when there's that identity, there's also, the people on the outside who are like, really, are you crazy? And it's like, yeah, but we're all kind of crazy together, right?
Totally. I think it's really powerful when you see somebody's profile or the bio that they fill in on like Twitter or something. And in that short space to share what you are about or what you care about, you are talking about a community or an idea that you identify with. That means that you've really begun to create an experience that people find very strong. Whether it's because of connection, whether it's because of transformation, they identify with your community or your movement so strongly that it becomes one of the few things they talk about when they talk about themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the kinds of things you learn about your friends. And so when you can share and display these things online, you're more easily able to connect with each other in a way that's more than just about the topic or the content or anything like that, right? A good example of sort of community is in the Lego space, right? This is Brick Can, so for Brick Canada. This is a community-led event. It's not a Lego sponsored event. It's just fans of Lego coming together in Canada to meet with each other. And within this space, there's even little communities inside of that community. You're going to find that when you build your own community, there's going to be, I don't want to say cliques because cliques often come with a negative connotation, but there are going to be subsets of people in your space who connect for whatever reason. So for example, in the Canadian brick space, Lego, there is this thing called AFOLs. AFOL is an adult fan of Lego, AFOL. And they all connect with each other. Even at Brick Can, there's like a special guide for AFOLs to be able to find each other and learn from each other. And what's really cool about this is like, this is the badge that you get at these events. Like, how cool is that? Now you have a language, you have a common sort of identity that actually takes physical form now, which is really, really interesting. But let's talk about paid communities, right? So I think there's some obvious benefits of building a paid community for yourself and for your brand. Obviously, you can get paid for your time, right? Managing a free community managing any community takes up a lot of time, as many people know. But you can get your time paid for if you have sort of a paywall behind that. Recurring income is definitely a possibility when it comes to these memberships to these communities. And that's oftentimes beneficial because you could plan for it. You can predict it. It's a lot more easy to involve sort of business models in that case. It becomes an asset that's more sellable if you wanted to go down that route. It's really interesting, but there's a lot more, right? You get to curate a more active community. Oftentimes, because you have a paid community, you know that those people are there to participate. It's much like how in band, right? A lot of you know I'm a band nerd. In high school, the band, not everybody wanted to be there. They wanted, like, half of us loved it because of music, but the other half took band because it was a PE credit. And so they didn't want to run laps. They wanted to march on the field. So it was like, oh, that almost feels like a paid community. You know, some people there are awesome and in it for the right reasons. Others are maybe in it just to kind of freeload or perhaps get some other things. Now, when I joined band in college, everybody made their own personal choice to be a part of that band. Therefore, everybody was a lot more into it. Everybody was a lot more serious about it. They did the work that was required. And as a result, the music was better. It was a lot more fun. And then I got to shake hands with Aaron Rodgers one day. That was cool.
What?
Yeah.
I'm just now finding this out.
Yeah. So I was at Berkeley when Aaron Rodgers was a quarterback and Marshawn Lynch was running back. It was like epic times. I was in the hall as the team came out. I had my hand out because I was in the band because we were about to do our field show, and he slapped my hand, and I still have yet to wash that hand. I still have the glorious Aaron Rodgers sweat.
Were you on the field when Marshawn Lynch took the golf cart for a ride?
I was in the stands and I watched the whole thing unfold. It was tremendous. Another benefit of having a paid community is, of course, on the other side of this, you get to keep the trolls out, right? You are likely going to have a really, really good curated group of people inside, and you get to keep the sort of haters and the naysayers on the outside. I mean, those people likely aren't going to pay to come into a community to start hating. So you get to keep the trolls out, and that benefits you because you have now this amazing group of people that you can connect with. Speaking of that, you'll be able to have a lot deeper connections. Oftentimes people feel a lot more safe being in a space where they know there are people who are also paying to be a part of this thing, and people will be more open. They'll be more vulnerable. And of course, when people are more open and vulnerable, that's when a lot of magic really happens. A lot of connections and a lot of transformation can happen. You are then able to facilitate. And one thing that we do, and Jillian and Jay and Tony do a great job of this, is we have masterminds inside of SPI Pro, and we're able to now connect people inside of SPI Pro to each other, and they have their groups that meet on a weekly or biweekly basis, and it's one of the most special things that has happened. Imagine if we tried doing this with, all the people who were free inside of our academy, for example, or in our Facebook group. It would just not work the same. We know that we're setting people up for success because we're facilitating the right people with each other. You can create your own platform. This is a huge one that lives outside of, for example, Facebook or LinkedIn. Yes, you can create a group, and it could be a paid group on those different places. But when you do that, you got to be very careful, because at any moment in time, Facebook, for example, could start throwing ads in the way and start to change that experience. On Facebook specifically, as we all know, there's going to be distractions, and you might get notifications about other things that might take you away from that group and community experience. But when you build on a platform like what we do with Circle, there's many other platforms, Mighty Networks, a lot of them are great. We love Circle. Full disclosure, we're an affiliate for Circle, and personally, I'm an advisor for it as well. Highly recommend it. I know, Jay, you run a community on Circle as well, as do many others here. We're huge fans of Circle. Affiliate link in the description. But that's a platform that you get to own. You get to control it. It's your sandbox now. You're just using these tools that are available versus you playing in somebody else's sandbox, which you could wake up tomorrow and that could go away, or something could change, and that's very scary. And then one of my favorite things, and I talk about this in my book, Superfans, is when you build a community and people start to identify with each other and they're starting to have conversations with each other, I mean, that does nothing but heighten the authority of your brand, because you are the one facilitating those interactions, and people can fall more in love with your brand because you've given them that opportunity to bring people together. I remember I ran an event, an in-person event, Jay, once. I spoke at an event in St. Louis, and I paid to have this restaurant make pizza and beer and bring all the fans together. And I remember there was this woman at the end of the night who I hadn't spoken to, and I felt bad because, people were there to hang out with me and stuff for a little bit. But at the end of the night, I went up to her and I was like, hey, I'm so sorry we didn't get to connect. And she's like, Pat, no offense, but I didn't come here to see you. And at first I was taken aback a little bit, but I was like, and she explained, she's like, no, like, I hear your voice every day. I love your podcast, but I never find people like me. And you've provided this for us. Thank you so much. I wanted to make the most of my time there. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. You could have started with that, but okay. Anyway, so creating fans who will fall more in love with your brand, and you get the best feedback. Some of our best feedback for SPI in general now comes from this curated community of paying members. And it's awesome because, they're paying, they care, and they want the brand to do well. They want it to succeed, and they will do what they can to make that so. Why wouldn't you want that, right? So now let's talk about, before we get into this, and we'll talk about launch really quick, benefits of a paid community for your members, right? They get access to a curated space and conversations with the right people inside. You've done them that service of bringing all these people together. That is worth, value. Skin in the game, right? Because people are paying, they are now more likely to participate. They don't want their money to go to waste. They are more likely to be active in discussions and show up to events and whatnot. Speaking of events, they can come to exclusive access. They get access to exclusive content and events. Now, community is not necessarily about more content, right? I think a lot of people confuse this and say, okay, I have to build a community, so I need, 6 modules and all these other things in here. That can work, but if that's a selling point, then it's not really about community anymore. That could be about just guidance. That could be about access to information. But a community is, again, as we pointed out, those interactions between people and each other. So you could have content in there, but how are people taking that content and then utilizing the conversations to make that actually work, or to get inspired, or to get motivated, or to learn from each other in that way? A safe space to ask questions. Again, when people know that there's a filtered group of people in here who have gone through a process to get in, then they're going to be more likely to speak up, and that vulnerability doesn't play much of a role as much as it does in a free group. People can get mentorship, motivation, and inspiration, and ultimately, you can help save people time. When you bring people into the right space, they can get access to the right answers, the right information, the right people to get further faster. And that ultimately will benefit them and, of course, benefit you. So let's talk about launch strategy. I was trying to think of an analogy that works because Jay always one-ups me on analogies and they're great. And I was thinking about, I have a lot of experience with food trucks. I don't own a food truck myself, but I've done a lot of studying. I had a website on it that I sold in 2019 about it. And I think a food truck is a perfect way to imagine how you might launch your own membership platform, a paid one, right? So imagine you are interested in starting a food truck. You have a cuisine that you like to cook about, and you want to set up shop somewhere and drive around and make some money doing that. That's awesome. Build a community. Many food trucks have their own communities for sure, but it would not be good to spend all this money to buy a food truck and then go out there and just kind of go at it just right away, right? This would be the equivalent of you spending all this time building a community, building all the different spaces, creating it, and then launching it out into the world. I think you could benefit by narrowing it down and taking a more iterative approach first, much like you do with any other thing that you might be building online. So let's take an iterative approach to building a food truck. Well, how do people start food trucks really? Well, what happens is they do sort of an alpha launch, right? A test, if you will. And what this might look like in the food truck world is you inviting your friends over, just some people that you know, to come over and test some of your menu items. You can let them know that you're starting this thing, and you can gauge whether or not, what their gut reaction might be. You can ask them about what the food is and how it relates to that theme, or you can see what dishes they like the best. You might have a bunch of ideas, much like how people who build communities have ideas for, okay, I'm going to create 50 different spaces about these different things. But if you have a small group of people who come in first and tell you, okay, well, I would actually use these spaces. Oh, this space doesn't what is he? I don't even know what that means. You could start to get people to start poking holes in something early on when people know that there are holes to be poked. Right. So an alpha launch, you invite a few people in. We did this with SPI Pro. Jay brought over a number of people. And we had some amazing conversations in a space where we knew it was okay that this was going to be a ghost town. That's the other thing. You don't want to launch this thing and have zero conversations happening, right, Jay? You want to have some activity. What are your thoughts on the importance of sort of just this tight-knit alpha launch? You're sharing some of the menu items with your friends first before then moving on to the next step.
Yeah, really important. I mean, a community is a space that you share with other people, right? And so if you came into a physical space and there was all this excitement and people were going to tell you how great this space was, and you got in there and there was nothing for you to do, nothing for you to eat, no one for you to talk to, you're probably not going to spend that long waiting around for people to join. You might think, I'm the idiot here. Like, I feel bad that I have been duped into coming here. And you might bounce away. So the benefits of an alpha launch, the people that you would bring into your community in an alpha launch are people that you can be extremely upfront with and say, hey, you're coming into an empty room. And in fact, I'm looking to you to help me get this party started. And there's likely an incentive for them to do that, whether it's getting early access to this, getting some extra time with you. Maybe you're even giving them free membership for a period of time. That aligns incentives. So they are coming in with expectations that this is going to be quiet, and their role is in helping to get the party started so you can invite the rest of the guests of the party. And when they get there, it feels like it is already in progress.
Absolutely. I mean, you want to definitely put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's coming into this space. Now, I remember when I went to my 10-year high school reunion, it was at 6:30 p.m. I got there at 6:30 p.m. I was the first one there. It did not feel good. It felt super weird. And like, that's not what we want to happen. If there was a group of people who were there early to welcome me, maybe some of the committee, right, who I don't know where they were, I would have at least felt welcomed. And even if there weren't that many people in there, it would have been a better experience for sure. And then like the next person who came in was somebody I didn't even know really well. And it was just such awkward conversation, right? So anyway, those are some of my nightmares from my own community experiences.
And to add on to that a little bit, if somebody is so excited that they're getting early communication from you that you're launching a membership or a community and they can come in and be one of the first people, and they take the leap to do that, chances are they have a high amount of respect and regard for you. And so when they come in and it feels kind of quiet, you can really put a lot of time and effort into sending direct messages to these people, which is going to make them feel awesome. They're going to feel really great that they're getting that extra time from you. And it's going to feel like this wonderful opportunity and being at the ground floor and communicating with you. So you can compensate for some of that quietness with your own voice, both in a forum setting and kind of sharing what to expect, but really in direct messages.
For sure. And we'll talk about onboarding and to have people understand what to do next once they get in closer to the end here. But, I think direct messages are completely underutilized just in general. And especially the ability to, on a lot of these platforms, to be able to put video into that too. I mean, imagine you're in for the first time. Yes, it might be a little bit quiet, but you get a personal video message from the founder of that community. Wow, like what an experience that would be. And it sets the tone real quick up front. And then, of course, like Jay said, if you're honest about, okay, well, hey, we're just starting out, and you get the most excited people in there, they're going to give you a lot of flexibility in terms of, well, what to expect and what should be in there. Okay, so that's your alpha launch. And your alpha launch, you might be able to get from, like Jay said, people who are excited. You might actually know some people in your head that you might be able to go out to and reach out to. You don't need very many people, right? I think even honestly, even like 5 to 10 people to start, just to get in there, to start like, hey, when I logged in, like I didn't get an email. Oh gosh, well, thank God I figured that out now. So, and these people understand that there's going to be problems, right? Would you say 5 to 10 is a good number if people like to know exactly the number? So that's my take.
Yeah, totally. I think that on the low end, 5. I think striving for 10 is even better, because probably one of the first activities you'll have somebody do when they come into your community is introduce themselves. And you'll probably start off with a post about yourself and saying, here's how you introduce yourself. But that first person to go after you and model that behavior as a member is really a big icebreaker. So getting a few people in, it doesn't have to be a ton of people, but getting a few people in to start doing that and to start showing what other type of content and posts should be made by the community is a really, really big help. And it doesn't take many people to kind of lay that groundwork.
For sure. And I would recommend you go check out Open Circle number 2. Again, link in the description later, with Jillian talking about a lot of the things that you can do in there with your community to engage and to get them excited and to get them showing up and involved. Okay, step 2, the beta launch, right? Or the, as I prefer to call it, the founders launch. Beta, at this point through the alpha group, that small, tiny group, you've already knocked off some of the kinks. I mean, there still might be some more, but you want to do a launch that's sort of exclusive for just the audience that you've built already. This isn't necessarily anything I would spend money like on ads to build into. But the beauty of a founders launch is you give people first real access to the community. And we launched our founders group in July of 2019 at SPI Pro. And it was just a really special moment. Those people were first to join. They were always continually recognized as first to join. Within Circle, we have the ability to put tags and little badges next to people's names. And so we can see who in there is a founder. And of course, as a result of coming in early, and having a lot of those kinks knocked out already, having some conversations already happening thanks to the alpha group, people come in as a cohort. They come in together. It's almost like the doors have opened and these people are all coming and experiencing it together. You have a lot of introductions happening at the same time. They might also get some benefits of coming in early. For example, maybe it's a little bit of a discount price, a price that will be grandfathered for them that's lower than what the actual price will be when you launch publicly. And that gives them, again, some incentive to stay on, gives them incentive to come in early. You could have limited spots available as well if you'd like to do that. And I would launch it to the group of people who already know you exist, and not necessarily try to find cold people to come in, but the group of people that you've curated in your business and in your career and on your social streams and in your email list. This is the group who you want to bring in. And again, that sort of exclusivity of being first to be a part of it at the deal price and have access to you and some of the fun things that are happening. You definitely want to stack an event or two to have people to look forward to right away. But Jay, founders launch, so important. I think it would behoove anybody to do that versus just kind of, hey, here's the community. It's open, all the time now, and, get in.
Yeah. Beta launch, founders launch is really great because this serves your super fans. Your alpha launch is probably more likely to be friends or peers or colleagues who know they are doing you a little bit of a favor. And the thing about your alpha launch members, if you are offering them complimentary access because you're asking them to help you, chances are they may disappear after a short period of time because it might not have been a priority for them up front. It might have been there to help you more so than wanting to be an active part of the community. The people who want to be an active part of the community are likely your super fans who are going to want to join your beta launch. And as Pat said, by having a paid membership community, incentives are kind of aligned where, they want to invest time and energy and attention into the platform. You are being compensated for the amount of effort that it takes to run the community, and being still very, very early. Because as we said, 5 to 10 members might be all you need for your alpha launch. these people coming in are still going to get a lot of access to you and your team and your ideas, which is likely a big part of why they're joining.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jay. And then of course, after that, it's closed down for a while is what we would recommend. I mean, you can always have always open, and we'll talk more about those strategies in just a second. But at this point, founders group, you work on them, you make them feel special, you give them a lot of love, and you make them feel included. And that will then take you to, at a period in the future, your first sort of public launch, if you will. You already have a thriving community now. People are talking, they're excited. You've gotten a sense of, well, what is really valuable here firsthand from those initial members. You've ironed out all the kinks. You've perhaps added some new spaces. Maybe you've removed some. We've done that plenty of time as we've sort of optimized what the conversations are about inside of SPI Pro. And then the best part about this is you will have unlocked that confidence to go big and wide with it. I think that oftentimes with a beta group or founders group is sometimes you still have that thing in the back of your head. I mean, we're all creators. We all go through the imposter syndrome. Sometimes you might not think that it's going to work out, but oftentimes it does, especially if you know you're providing value and you've gotten some feedback from the alpha users. And this is something people have been asking for, but that confidence that you have will move you forward so much, not just in the launch itself, but in the email copy and how you talk about this thing. And, this is where you then mention it everywhere. You have a period of time where it's open again. You have perhaps testimonials. And the best way to bring and surface sort of success from the group is to actually put a spotlight on the group members who were a part of your founders group. And we do this all the time. We are inviting a lot of SPI Pro members to be, on the podcast and to share their story and to write about them. We've invited them to guest post on our website. And a lot of those kinds of things, people start to hear this SPI Pro, SPI Pro, SPI Pro. They're going to hear your membership talked about. And if you can showcase the success stories and the value that people on the inside have gotten, people on the outside are going to want to come in as well. And then, of course, every launch you learn as you go. And we've made plenty of mistakes, but that's kind of how you take it. That's kind of the alpha to beta to first public launch strategy.
Yep. I really like this framework because if you've ever been a part of a community joining early or started your own community starting early, the beginning of a new community is really exciting. It's also fairly frenetic and volatile even. So the great part about having these phases, and especially having the beta launch before the public launch, the beta launch and your super fans coming in there provide some stability and a little bit of a base layer of how we operate in this community and how you experience good transformation and good value within this community. And when you do your public launch, it's like you're adding on to the strong base as opposed to just heightening some of this frenetic, volatile energy. Because at that point, you should know, here are the types of rituals we have in the community, which Jill talked about in Open Circle number 2. Here are the types of ways you engage. Here is, our onboarding, which we've really pressure tested and gotten all the kinks out. And now we're just adding more people into this machine that's working very well.
And then over time, you have the ability, it's not going to happen right away, but it will happen, is the community starts to take a life of its own. It starts to be this thing that has a heartbeat now. It's a living, breathing thing. It's so awesome. And I'll go into SPI Pro and I'll just see some amazing conversations happen that I'm not even required to be in, and value is being exchanged. And again, like we talked about in those charts in the beginning, it's not about you talking to them anymore. I mean, that should still happen. And of course, they should be able to still contact and have access to you, but it's the access to each other that is where the growth and the long-term relationships happen within the group. It's just such an amazing thing.
Yeah. And one last point on the beta before the public launch idea here. If you have never launched or managed a community before, it's likely that you're underestimating the demand on your time that it will be. Not to say you can't rise to that by any means, but you should get a sense for how you do your role of engaging and holding space for that community and fostering that community and slot it into your own schedule. Because if you bring in a ton of people very, very quickly and it's more than you can handle, it's difficult to help get that community into a stable place where it's really thriving. So it's good to grow yourself with that community in terms of, how you budget your time and allocate your own attention.
For sure. Sandy in here says, taking lots of notes. That's great. By the way, a replay will be available right at this link that you're watching at almost immediately after. This is the beauty of doing this on YouTube. They host and will do that for us. We see Tom in the house and Mindful Mompreneur Moments and so many other people. Mike and Dawn, welcome. Great. A lot of value already being shared, but I think it's about time to talk about pricing, is it not?
Pricing, fun. Let's do it.
Pricing, $1 million.
Pricing. Awesome. Okay. You guys see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about pricing. Pat talked about some of the benefits of a paid community. I'm going to share, I'm going to rehash a little bit of that, but I have some more that I want to add on there. But when we talk about your community, there are really, 4 types of pricing models that you can consider here. Like we have this binary expectation of free versus paid, but there's actually some stuff in the middle ground, some really interesting middle ground, and even some further polarity that I want to talk about here with these 4 models: free, paid, gated, and tiered. And I'll talk about each of these one by one, and some of the pros and some of the cons. And hopefully that opens up a lot of really great questions for Q&A later, which we will have time for. I saw a question about that in the chat. So let's talk about free communities real quick and the role that they can play and why you might want to consider having a free community and what it can do for you. One pro is that it can really serve a top of the funnel attraction, not issue, but opportunity for you. If you're trying to get more people to be aware of you and the work that you do and the things that you make, having a free community can be a really great way to do that because there's very little barrier to entry, and people who are getting good value out of that community will refer other people and they can come in. It's very frictionless. It's very seamless. And it's a great introduction to you. It also makes a great place to support your products. We see this a lot with like actual product companies, where if I have an issue, they have a customer support forum. I'm not paying to have access to the customer support forum. That's a free thing. And it solves a lot of issues for a lot of people, both from their team directly, but also they often have members of their community who just like to help. And that can be really, really great. This can really deepen your relationship with your audience, as Pat shared in his initial graphic of, the one-directional, one-to-one communication you often have with people in your audience. When you have a community, they can speak back to you and you can really have an even stronger connection and build superfans with a free community. A free community can also be a really strong core to build a paid community out of. Some people worry like, if I launch a paid community, what if nobody joins and there aren't many people to have connections with one another? Starting free can help solve that issue. A free community is also more accessible. If it's free and open, obviously anyone can join, no matter what their socioeconomic status is or where they are in the world. It just becomes much more accessible. But there's some downsides to a free community. Ongoing and actually increasing maintenance cost. You have to dedicate time to any community, free, paid, or otherwise. And that is not a small amount of energy or effort. And as a community gets older and grows because it's free and more people can join, that actually increases the amount of attention you may need to pay to it. You may be getting more DMs, you may see more posts, you may have more moderation. And if you're not being compensated for that community, the more successful it is, the more of a drain it is on you. People pay attention to what they pay for. I mentioned this with the alpha members a little bit, but if you have people coming in and they're not paying to be there, it's very easy for them to disengage and pay more attention to things that they have actually financially invested in because they are literally more invested in those spaces. I've experimented with this. Freelancing School is a platform that I have to help people learn freelancing. I have a free community there because I wanted to serve as many people as possible, but I have experienced the ongoing and increasing maintenance cost of this. And it's tough when you have other priorities and other things that demand attention and other things people are actually paying for. It's challenging to continue to prioritize time in a free community. Let's talk a little bit about private. Pat talked about this, paid communities and some of the benefits here. It's revenue generating, which means it's more sustainable. You have aligned expectations or aligned incentives to put your own time and attention into making the community great. You can have a more curated audience here because while it's not as accessible, having a paywall in front of it really makes the person who's considering joining question, is this something that I value and will want to invest in? Am I at the place where this would help me? So it naturally curates your audience a little bit more. Incentives are aligned. I just spoke to that a little bit. It encourages you to invest more deeply into those who invest in you. It's a two-way relationship here. You can see the people who really value you and your work by investing in your membership, which means that you are incentivized to further invest in them, which deepens the relationship. It's a really good symbiosis. Naturally, it's less accessible because there is a price tag on it, which will have a filtering mechanism for people who just can't afford your community. It might be harder to gain more of a critical mass where those peer-to-peer connections happen more often and more fluidly. People will definitely have higher expectations of your membership if they're paying for it, which makes your job in some ways more difficult. You can't do the work for people. This is a frustration of anyone that I know who's running a paid community. People come in, they have aligned expectations. They know what they can get out of this community. 2 months later, they leave. They're not there anymore. Why? Because they didn't have value. They didn't find value. Why? Sometimes it's because they aren't putting any energy into logging into the community, starting discussions, responding to people, sending messages. You can't do that for them as a community builder. You can certainly lower friction and do what you can to help make it easier for them to engage and know how to engage, but you can't do the work for them. And so sometimes people leave and you feel like you couldn't have done anything to help them. And it's a hard thing. And then, of course, churn is, a negative part of a paid community. Sometimes people come in and they are so engaged and they're such a core part of the community and the culture. And when they leave, it feels like a hole in the community. Like it's difficult for the culture of the community if somebody who's really a champion decides to leave. And ultimately, that's their choice. They may not want to continue to pay for something. So when that happens, if you do lose a core member, sometimes that might encourage other members to say, well, maybe it's time for me to go too. And you start to see like this negative downward spiral. Pat, anything you want to add here while I take a breath and get some water?
No, this is great. I mean, I think it's important to understand that, with all these different models, there's going to be negatives, but in many cases, the pros, especially for a paid tier or paid membership, definitely outweighs the cons. But I think that this is helpful because it has us prepare for what might come. And I think this is also speaking to the benefit of, starting small. You can actually save more and have a lot more sanity if you start small, and then you can grow from there instead of feeling like you have to have 1,000 members on day one.
Yeah, and don't look at the number of pros and cons here as must be net negative to do a paid community. That is not the case at all. Consider your own circumstances, but often, those 4 pros are such strong reasons to do a community. The cons are more so like challenges to be aware of that you should anticipate and be ready to counteract to the degree that you can.
Right.
SPI Pro is our paid membership community. Here's a screenshot of our onboarding and start here space. Obviously, we have found that having a paid community is one of the most important and fulfilling things we can do as a business. And Jill and Tony and Known, they do an incredible job making this an awesome experience. We have more than 500 members, as you see here, almost 600 when I took this screenshot earlier today. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. And about a year and a half in, I feel like we are really now reaping the benefits of having some stability and some culture that has been made over a period of time. Like it takes some time for people to really feel at home in a space and make it part of their routine. And now we have a really strong group of people who have done that. Then we have this gated option or this partially open kind of hybrid community. And what I mean by this is there are 2 ways you can do this. And I'll show you 2 examples here at the end of this slide. But you might have a community that is partially public and open, and people can join at any time and maybe communicate with each other in certain spaces, but then have other spaces within the community that you only get access to as a paid member. You may also have a space, and this is something I've done with Circle specifically recently that looks public, as if people can land there, see all of the spaces that exist, but they can't actually access really any of the information without joining. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. Pro to this, especially if you have like some free spaces, some open spaces, is that makes the community more accessible on the whole. More people can join, more people can get some value from it, even if they don't ultimately become a paying member. It gives you the opportunity to serve first. A lot of people, they want to try before they buy. They want to have a taste of what this is like before they come in. I actually don't recommend free trials of memberships very often, because if you have people come into a community and they're there for 7 days and they build relationships and then they're gone, it's kind of a weird situation for other members. It introduces some volatility that you don't necessarily want. But if they're in the free areas that everyone has access to, and they're starting to see, oh, this is what it might be like to be a paid member of this community, that can be really powerful. It's easier to gain critical mass if you have some areas that are free and open. And there's some built-in passive marketing to the membership, especially the way that Circle does their spaces and space groups. You can really show people what exists, even if they aren't a paid member, and constantly be planting the idea in their head, oh, I might be able to get a lot out of this if I did join. It is a little bit more challenging technically to build out, not because you need to have any advanced technical skills. You just need to understand the tooling more deeply. You, of course, need to show the value behind the pay gates for them to convert from a free member to a paid member, and that can take some extra work. Some people may not convert. Couple examples here to show you guys. This is the SPI Academy we were talking about earlier. Tom Gibson in the chat was asking about this. If you are a member of any of our, or a student, I should say, of any of our courses here at SPI, you get access to our SPI Pro Academy. It is a course community for students. You can't access this for free unless actually you go through BYOB, which has been free, and then you are a course student, then you can access the Academy. But this is meant to continue to serve our course students, and it does not cost any type of ongoing subscription fee. But a lot of people who join this, and especially who join this through our live cohort-based courses, get a taste for what it's like to be a part of communities of ours, and they often opt to apply and join SPI Pro. This is an experiment that I've been running recently, and this is what I want to show you with Circle specifically. This, you can go to the community that I have for the Tweet 100 challenge, the free challenge that I do to publish more on Twitter. I launched a Circle community that's a paid community, but I set it up in such a way that when you join, you can see all of the spaces. You actually can see a couple of the posts that I shared, which are a video tour of the space. But if you click on any of these channels, it basically gives you this message to say, hey, you have to be a member to see the posts within here. Here's where to become a member. So you're not just landing on like a paywalled page saying, hey, put in your credit card information to have access to this. You're actually getting to see kind of what members see before having to pay anything. And then finally, the fourth model here is tiered pricing. And by tiered pricing, we mean having a paid membership, but there are different pricing tiers with different levels of access. So you might have like a silver, gold, and platinum membership, or a bronze, silver, gold, or a, basics, starter, and professional tier. We see this a lot with SaaS companies, software companies, but you can have that as a community. And a benefit here is you can sustainably engage deeper with people who want that. There is likely some percentage of your audience and of your community that would want to engage with you deeper if given the opportunity. And if you have only one tier of membership, they don't have the opportunity to do that. So you can't even really know who those people are that you can give more custom attention to, custom help to serve more deeply. And tiered memberships help you identify those people and serve them in that way. Similarly, it helps you earn more revenue from your biggest fans who are happy to be there and to do that, to engage with you in different ways. It's a natural way for you as a creator to invest more deeply in one product. Often we feel like to grow our business, we need to create and launch new products. And that can be kind of exhausting. But if you have tiers to your membership, it's just giving you a way to invest more deeply in one product, one experience, and serve one community even more deeply. There is some built-in passive marketing for those tiers within the membership, because likely people will be in the community and communicating with other people who might be members of a higher tier who have access to some other type of benefit. And they'll hear about that and they'll learn about that. And they'll say, I want that. And it's usually easier to get somebody to upgrade than to purchase in the first place. It's a little challenging to figure out like what those different tiers are. You have to be really thoughtful about separating what are the different types of value that I can deliver to these different tiers. You run the risk of over-engineering this and creating so many benefits for people that it's hard for you to like sustainably deliver on that across all the different tiers. So it's really risky from the standpoint of just overcommitting yourself. Here's an example of a tiered membership. This is the trends.vc community. Drew has 3 tiers of membership. On the far left, there's actually not a community aspect. He leads with writing, with content. So on one end, you can just get like the premium version of the content at this price point. Then in the middle, you can get all the premium content and access to the community forum. And on the far right, you can have all the premium content, the community forum, and some masterminds that he helps to facilitate. Anything you want to add on any of these differences, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I was imagining, Patreon allows you to create these different tier levels with different access levels to certain things, but it's really nice that now a lot of these tools like Circle can allow you to create these tiered sections, and you could tier it based on certain spaces that people get access to, right? At the higher tier, you get, the VIP room essentially, that new conversations can happen and interesting connections can happen with other VIPs, for example. There is a lot of, like you said, I think the most important thing is like, how do you distinct each of those levels and not have those who are sort of maybe on the lower tier feel like, oh, well, there's literally nothing here. And then those on the higher tier, you have to think about price levels and the price separation between each. So how would you recommend, we make sure of that? Is that just discussions and whatnot, or?
Yeah, it's always good to get feedback from your members when you have ideas of this. What you'll see in a lot of communities with tiers, you can see it here, but the page is so long, I couldn't fit it all on one slide. The way that Drew lays this out is across, horizontally. He's trying to show you all the things you get and the things that are consistent across all 3 tiers and the things that are added. You see that a lot in pricing tables for software companies, once again, but it's probably helpful for you as a community builder to have your own sort of matrix and spreadsheet, even just to kind of show, okay, here are the things that I offer. Here's what I'll offer at this pricing tier, with this pricing tier, with this pricing tier. A lot of people who go the tiered path usually start with just one paid membership. And so your assumption, if you're going to tiered, might be, okay, what are the next 2 levels after this that I can introduce? And I would encourage people listening to actually think, what if the tier that exists right now is the middle tier? What is something that I can offer on the lower end that is still valuable, that isn't everything I'm offering now, that might get more people into the community and give me the ability to then try to market them into this main tier that everyone else is in right now?
Yeah, I love that. And I think, like you said, a lot of this marketing will happen from within, right? There'll be certain members who come from the higher tier and then they are engaging with other people from the lower tier. And then it's like a lot of interesting interactions can happen in that way. But I like that thought about, okay, well, if you were just at one price right now, that's the middle. Let's create the separation from there. I like that a lot.
So those are the 4 different pricing models that I would consider if I was you. And you may be asking, okay, but how do I know what price to actually charge for my membership? And that's a great question. I don't actually have like a very specific answer for you because it's really dependent on your audience. There is some upper bound for what members in your audience can afford. right? Like you probably wouldn't be able to sell a $50,000 per month membership to anybody in your audience. Um, so there's like a theoretical upper bound. And hopefully, by knowing your audience, you have a pretty good sense of where that might be on a monthly or annual basis. So you need to be within that. I hate to kind of have this cop out and say like it's kind of a gut feel thing for your audience, but you really need to kind of feel it out and have discussions with people in your audience and show them, here's what a membership to my community or my community and courses would entail, and then show them a price and say, would you pay that? And it's really easy for people just to say yes. You'll get a lot of data on whether people will pay what you're asking when you launch your membership to your beta list. You'll get a lot of feedback then. Another reason to have kind of a limited beta launch before the full public launch to your entire audience, because you'll start to see not only does this convert, but is it not converting because of price? Because sometimes the price isn't actually the issue. Like as long as you're below this theoretical upper bound of what somebody could pay in your audience, it's more of an issue of, am I framing this and positioning this and explaining this? They will pay this amount that I'm asking, because you can be within whatever they're able to pay and just not explain the value of this in a way that it makes sense with that price tag. So there's two variables here that you have to tease out early on when you're marketing and building out your community, both like, what is the value? How do I explain that value? And what is the price that I want to charge for that value? Pat,
this is why I think about this. Oh, I love that. I mean, that's so important. I think this is why having conversations about your membership before you actually implement it is going to be really important, because you can get a sense of sharing what it is that you might want to include in it and get a sense and a gut reaction from people immediately on, okay, well, does this actually, exist any value for you or not? You might then be able to have a conversation that takes you into a place that has value that you didn't even know existed, that wasn't there when you thought about it initially. So conversations for sure. And then as you build it out, you can use sort of a prototype sort of template of what your sections might be and the kinds of events you want to have. And you can use that as a piece or an artifact to show people, to say, hey, is this something that you think you would be involved with and love to be a part of? And, what would this be worth to you? Right? Because value doesn't necessarily come from, the number of hours of video. The value doesn't necessarily come from, and usually doesn't come from, the number of other members even specifically. It comes from how might they be able to more easily transform to where they want to go, or how difficult has it been to connect with these people elsewhere or outside of what they've been trying to do. And now you're providing the space for them to do that, which would save them a lot of time, right? Time, again, is something that you could put a value on, and people can understand that when considering, the worth of what it is you might be offering.
Yeah. And a lot of people who are building a paid community, they assume that they need to offer a monthly and an annual price. And that's also a lever that you can play with and pull in different directions. You might only want to offer an annual price. I recently spoke with a community builder who has a community for people focused on finance, and they have the highest annual versus monthly breakdown that I've ever heard. Like almost everybody does annual because it's a community based on finance. And they can very easily see that if I'm planning to be here for a year, it's cheaper for me to go the full year. So depending on your audience, the way that you price this could be different. When you offer a monthly possibility, but you think a lot of people will want to be there for the year, you're now introducing 12 times per year when the person has to ask themselves, am I getting the value out of this that I expected? And going back to my slide that I had, if you can't do the work for people, sometimes people have a very busy month and they don't engage their community. And if your question of renewal hits them in that period of time, they might leave based on just like a bad week or a busy week when they wouldn't necessarily do that. There's lots of times when I can look back on a certain month and say, did I do anything? Did I get anything out of this investment? But when I look back at a year of investment, it's usually easier for me to justify and be like, yeah, that was worth it. For SPI Pro, our monthly price right now is $49 per month. Our annual price is $490. And talking to members, a lot of people look back and say, did I get $490 worth of value this year in SPI Pro? And the answer is an easy yes. But psychologically, there's something about, did I get $49 of value this month? Sometimes that's no. And that might trigger you into leaving when you don't want to. So you can consider biannual pricing, 2 price points per year. You can do quarterly. Little bit of spoiler here. I'm going to talk about cohorting soon. We have 4 cohorts of membership each year, and we are moving to quarterly pricing versus monthly pricing to match that rhythm, which I'll talk about here. But it makes it easier. Like you're psychologically removing decisions from people's lives when you don't offer monthly pricing. But I understand a lot of communities that is helpful because it makes it more accessible for people from a cash flow perspective.
Right. So there's a balancing act, and as you just heard Jay say, we're making some changes. I mean, we're learning as we go, and we're pivoting to certain ways to benefit the community the best and the people who are in it, which all means you don't have to make the perfect decision up front. You just have to make decisions and then move forward, and you can adjust as you go along. And so we don't want all this discussion about numbers and pricing and all this stuff to stop you from moving forward. We want to give you and lay out all the options, and we need you to make the decisions that make the best sense for you, for sure. But hopefully by us leading by example, you could see some of the mistakes that perhaps we've made or some of the adjustments we're making so that you can consider those things as well.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about membership applications because, as Pat said at the top of the hour, it's not necessary for you to have an application for every community, but we have chosen to do so. And I want to talk a little bit about why and maybe why you wouldn't want to do so. So when it comes to applications and basically pre-screening for people to join your community, this is what our application looks like for SPI Pro. We have a dedicated web page. We have a little bit of detail about here's what you need to know about your membership, which says invitations are sent on a quarterly basis. In 2021, we'll be inviting people on these 4 dates. And then the application is over on the right-hand side. And it's a pretty in-depth application. There have been times this year where we've added to the application, and I've had this fear of, gosh, if we add another question, is it going to stop people from applying? And now we don't have as many amazing members as we could. And so far, basically every time I've been proven wrong. We add a little bit more information to the application, and it hasn't slowed down velocity of applications, and we get more information to know if it's a good fit or not. We get a message into Slack when somebody applies. We have an automated bot in Slack, which I absolutely love because it just pops in and it says, hey, somebody applied for your membership, which is a very special feeling. And we've even made it in such a way that it shows us exactly their answers to the questions that we asked in the application, which is really, really powerful, really fun to literally see the notes they've made to us, why they want to join. It helps us stay on top of applications, but it's also just psychologically very nice. When somebody applies, they get an immediate response from us through ConvertKit that says, thank you for your interest in joining SPI Pro. Want to let you know we've received your application. We open our doors to new members 4 times each year. We're setting expectations right in that beginning of the process of getting your application. We open our doors 4 times each year. We'll contact you before the next enrollment period with details about your status. While you wait, we recommend to make sure your website is up to date, your income stream is doing well, and stay subscribed to our emails, because if you don't, we can't contact you. Then 4 times per year, we have a series of emails that we send out to people who have been accepted. This is a screenshot in ConvertKit of one of the emails we just sent out, letting them know that, hey, your application's been accepted. Here is where you can join SPI Pro. So some pros to applications: it helps to ensure that you have high quality members, people who are aligned with the community that you're building. It makes membership feel more exclusive and special. I mentioned Alt MBA as a transformational experience for me at the top of this. To my understanding, the application to join Alt MBA is not actually deterministic, meaning they don't tell anyone no if they apply. It's more so a filter for effort to say, if you don't take the effort of filling out this application, we don't believe you'll be a successful contributor to this experience. So there's something to be said about that as a filter. Yeah.
That's interesting. We don't do that. We actually do have sort of a system in place to, in a way, score answers so that we know and understand that a person would be the right fit for the community, because the community is not for people who are literally starting from scratch, and we just want to ensure that.
This could heighten excitement over time. There's something kind of exciting about waiting to know if you have been picked, waiting for your opportunity to join something that you're anticipating. That can be a positive experience. It helps to create and ensure a safe space for other members of your existing community. You're putting a ton of effort into culturally helping this community thrive. And if you just allow anyone to come in without any type of screening, that can be a dangerous sort of thing. Helps you weed out trolls, on that same point. A lot of people aren't going to take so much effort to just be negative and troll you that they're going to fill out an application that makes them seem like an excited member to then come in and flip tables. And it provides more insight into your members. This is something that I undervalued initially, but it's really powerful. This is a suggestion from Jill on our team. We put in just an open text box on our application that's optional to say, is there anything you think we should know? And I've been blown away by the detail people put into that, the thought they put into that, to hear their stories. It's really powerful. And your application can actually be used to help set expectations for the experience, which is very helpful for a paid community because, as I said before, you can't do the work for people. You need them to know how to engage, and you can continue to enforce that expectation in your application. And it supports cohorting. If you do want to do cohorting, which we'll talk about here in a second, if you're letting members in periodically as opposed to any time, applications help you to manage those cohorts of new members. There are some downsides to applications. While it may heighten excitement for some people, they may actually lose excitement. They may be really excited about joining right now, and now they have to wait 2 months. 2 months happens, and maybe now they don't want to join as badly. It can make membership feel intimidating, maybe. It might scare people away to look at an application, asking a bunch of information about their business. They may feel like, I'm not good enough. I'm not even going to try. It makes referral software more challenging. If you want to have an affiliate program for your community and you want to have an application up front before you collect payment, technically that makes referral and affiliate software more challenging to use. That's a very personal pain point that we felt, and I wanted to call it out because having an affiliate program for your membership is really powerful and has really aligned incentives for everybody, but an application makes that more challenging. It requires effort to score applications that are coming in. You can automate this to some extent. We have, but there's probably going to be at least some number of applications that you need to put some actual time into looking at to determine whether they are a good member or not. And applications can introduce implicit bias or exclusion, which you'll want to put some sort of measures in place, have maybe other members of your team look at it to make sure that you aren't ruling people out because of any type of implicit bias. Pat, anything you want to add to applications before I move on to cohorting? You are muted though.
Sorry about that. There is something very special about that moment when you send that email and you tell a person they're in. They feel really good about it, right? It's just like, we want to make it feel like they got into college or something like that, right? That there's now this new thing coming and it could be very exciting, which is why onboarding is very, very important because you want to continue that excitement moving forward. On the other side, well, what happens with people who we deny, right? Who we quote unquote reject? Thankfully, we've put a lot of time into considering what those people might feel like at that time. And we do not want to have people feel dejected and disrespected or anything like that. We want people to feel hopefully motivated to get to the point where they can then come back and apply. And so we never leave people hanging. We have information, we have links in that email that we send out that says, we're sorry it's not a good fit right now, but here's what we're looking for. And here are some articles, here's some podcast episodes that can help you along the way. And I think that's really great because, we've actually gotten feedback from people who we've said no to, said, oh, thank you. I realize I have a lot more to do. I'm more inspired now. You've given me something to shoot for. Like, I really love that. And I think that, I've been a part of things that I've applied for and have not gotten in and just says, sorry. And it's just like, well, that's not even helpful. Where do I go from here? And so if you do an application process, make sure to take care of those who you say no to as well, if you choose to deny people.
Yeah, totally. There's a certain tension that comes with building communities for a certain group of people because you have to have some specificity around who this community is for. Otherwise, we only need one community for every human on the planet, and that's it. You know, and that's just not the case, obviously. Like, we want to spend time in curated spaces of people who speak a similar language, who have similar goals. And your job as a community builder is to help create that space for them, including people of all walks of life as best you can. You know, scholarship programs are something that we're looking to build out for SPI next year, led by Tony and Known on our team. But curation is necessary for your community to really thrive, because otherwise it becomes a free-for-all talking about anything, and nobody's quite sure why they would spend time in your community versus somewhere else.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about cohorting. The question of cohorting is, should I allow people to come into my community anytime as long as they pass some criteria, which might be giving you an email address? It might be paying to have access. There might be no criteria other than just like literally signing up, or it could be paying to join as a member. Or do you want to open the doors periodically so that people can only come into your community at certain points in time? And I'm going to lay out a couple of ways to think about that. To me, and really this credit goes to Tony on our team for getting us to think this way in late last year, thinking about cohorting. Would you rather go to a party that's in progress and show up all alone? Or would you rather show up to that party with friends or with other people who are coming in equally new, equally fresh? I literally think back to college. If people watching this had a university experience, when you go off to college for the first time, you've been living with mom and dad or one of your parents for 18 years, and you go to college and now you know nobody. It would be so much more terrifying if you showed up 2 weeks after everyone else showed up, because there would be so many relationships that have already formed. There would be inside jokes, there would be schedules and rituals, and you would be totally left in the dark. So the magic of like move-in weekend at college is everybody is coming in on the same grounds at the same time, at least in the freshman class. Like, there are still sophomores, juniors, seniors, but you're not necessarily seeing them. You have a cohort, a class of people coming in at the same level as you, with the same fears and insecurities, and they're learning the ropes and learning where things are. And that's why ultimately we decided to cohort our membership of SPI Pro, because we wanted to make that experience of coming in, while it's going to be uncomfortable to some extent because there's going to be people there and you're going to have to learn something, at least you can learn it with others. So in SPI Pro, every time we have a new cohort come in, we have a new member kickoff. Here's the post from Jill. Our Q4 member kickoff is actually next week. If you're watching this and you want to join SPI Pro, you can still apply this week, and I'll keep an eye on that, and I'll invite you to join our current cohort so you can experience all of this. But we have our current cohort kicking off next week, where they'll get to know each other. They'll get to meet each other, and not just their business, but Tony does an incredible job of hosting this and facilitating this, where he gets people to connect on a human level. I don't even want to like spoil the experience. I really want you to like experience how we do this, because it's deep and it's meaningful, and it helps people regard this community in a special way. That's not just about like, how do I set up this email automation, which we can help with, but it's more so about like, how do I connect with people like me who have similar goals?
Would you akin it to? Would you equate it to like orientation? You go in the dorms, but then like the RAs
100%.
come in. They're like, all right, everybody, let's come in. Let's get to know each other. Maybe some icebreakers, like that sort of thing going on.
100%. And friendships form pretty quickly. People, you use that as a jumping off point to send direct messages to one another. Because again, going back to my point about you can't do the work for people, if you do get people onto a Zoom call and they're new to each other, and you force them into small breakouts or small groups where they can talk to each other, you've now created a relationship, even if there is some initial discomfort, because they're already there. They're a captive audience. They're going to work through the discomfort, and now they've formed a relationship, which can lead to DMs, which makes them more comfortable posting in the community. It's great. We also have dedicated private spaces for each cohort. So if you come in and you're looking at this sidebar over here and you're like, wow, where do I post things? How do I use this space? We are actually continuing to onboard you and your cohort within your space. Jill's been doing a masterful job of this over the last year, helping people, along the way to say like, hey, We have this video tour. Have you watched it? Hey, you may be asking, when can I join a mastermind? Here's what you need to know. Like drips of a little bit of information so you know what you're doing along the way. Kind of like a bulletin board outside of your dorm room on your floor.
Nice.
Gotta keep the analogy going all the way through.
I love it.
Some pros to cohorting. It allows you to have seasonal rhythms within your community, yes, but even within your team. Because if you're always open, that means all year, all the time, you're worrying about onboarding and you're worrying about applications. With cohorting, you can seasonalize this and say, okay, we just did new enrollment. We have a couple of months before we do that effort again. The next couple of months, let's focus on getting new applications, or let's focus on highlighting the stories of our community, or let's focus on revamping our programming. It allows you to have a consistent onboarding experience. If people can join at any time, day or night, any day, you don't know when that will happen. And so you'll either be really reactive as a community builder to make sure they're having a good experience coming in, or you might drop the ball and it's already awkward for them, but now they don't even have like their RA coming to welcome them and show them around. It can be really challenging. If you do cohorts, you know exactly when people will be coming in. You can have like your kickoff call, as I showed you. You can have kind of these beginning events. It helps you be a lot more consistent. It helps create camaraderie with members immediately. They can get to know each other. They have the shared badge. We badge each member by their cohort. So in the forum, you'll see like, oh, this person joined in the last quarter. Great. Or wow, this person's been here for a year and a half because they're a founding member. I should maybe take them seriously, or like reach out to them and learn more about how to use this space. It creates anticipation, which can be a positive thing. Sometimes, as I said, sometimes people lose steam on their excitement, but it can create anticipation to know like, hey, your application has been accepted, but we'll email you about joining in a month. Like I can look forward to that. It also creates some urgency to make a decision to join or not. When you have an always open option for your membership, I'm not necessarily incentivized to make a decision right now, but if you have this cohorting option and I can join, but I only can make that decision for the next 2 weeks, for better or for worse, I'm going to make a decision. Whereas if it's always open, I'll often just kick the can and never actually decide. Cohorting, though, introduces some, I should have put this as a con, some complexity with pricing options. If I'm offering quarterly cohorts, as we do at SPI, we still had a monthly pricing option, actually still to this day until Q1 of next year. So that created some complexity because it's like, well, we only let people in 4 times per year, but once you join, you can join monthly. We're finding that it might make more sense to really seasonalize this experience and say, you can join in this quarter and you pay by quarter. At the end of that quarter, you can choose to re-engage with us. And that's the direction that we're heading. On the negative side, it does make revenue more seasonal, where it might be nice that you can get a sale every single day when you're always open. If you're cohorting, those sales really come in about 4 times per year. And it can feel like you have a big marketing effort around those cohort open and close dates. Timing plays a part for prospective members. They may feel like, gosh, I want to join and I want to join right now. 2 months from now, I'm actually going to be busy with this project and I'm not sure that timing works for me. Figuring out when to actually have those cohort open periods can be a little bit challenging. We're still moving ours around for next year based on this year. This year, we had a really long period of time between cohorts 2 and 3 because we didn't want to introduce new membership in the middle of summer when we thought a lot of our members who are parents might be dealing with their kids at home. And we thought that might be challenging, but we're still trying to figure out exactly when in the year to have these open and close dates. And this gets back into onboarding. So let me pause there, Pat. What's your experience been like with our cohorts?
I mean, it's been amazing. I mean, people really do feel like they're coming in with their class, right? And I just remember what it was like going to school. Like it would have totally it would have been a much different experience if I went in sort of like mid-semester, right? I mean, you'd have to work really hard to find friends. And like you said, it feels a little uncomfortable because, you know, there are already things happening and already people in the dorms who had their own friends. And it's like you kind of come in later. I think there is a case for always open because, you know, oftentimes the argument is, well, a person wants it now. Why would you make them wait? Well, it's because of all these things we're talking about, in my opinion. So I do think that, you know, the cohort base, whether it's monthly, or, you know, even like depending on the velocity of your business, it could even be, you know, once a month or even twice a month if you have a good enough amount of people to come in together. But again, the beauty of this is it allows the team some breathing room between cohort openings and to allow ourselves to focus on those new cohorts. I know that those are the times when we want to make sure all those people feel welcome. So it's like, okay, now that they're in, let's all focus on making them feel welcome. And it just provides a much better experience, especially for, I think, a longer run. We have really low churn too, which is really nice. And I think reflective of how we've processed all this.
Yeah, the onboarding question is, or the onboarding experience is the biggest reason why I am in the camp of pro cohort. Pro cohort for pro
Cohort.
cohort. Yeah, because you want people to be successful and you want them to have a good first experience. And doing this model really helps you introduce an element of control over that experience to ensure that you are supporting them, that they're having the best beginning process as possible.
This is about people, right? Community is about people. And so thinking about their experiences through this should be the directive. I mean, that should be at the center of all the decisions, right? Hence the importance of onboarding, which we'll get into right now.
Yeah, we talked about this in depth in Open Circle number 1, which is in the description. It's linked here on YouTube, and I would encourage you to watch that whole thing because we go a lot deeper than I'm going to in the next couple of minutes here. But I wanted to rehash some of this specifically around onboarding, and then we'll get into Q&A here in about 10 minutes or so. So if you have questions, you can start putting them into the chat and we'll start pulling those out here soon. But onboarding is how you help people have safe and comfortable entry into your community. And the example I'd like to give a lot is CrossFit, or really any fitness community, but we'll go with CrossFit for now, because I think they have an excellent onboarding experience, which contributes to why a lot of people identify with CrossFit. A lot of people tell you that they're a CrossFitter, and that's because they have such a great experience that it becomes part of who they are. They've seen transformation. They really care about the people there. So that to me is indicative of really strong onboarding. And the way that I would explain that, if you go to a gym, you get shown around the space. You will get shown around the space either by someone that you came there with because they probably referred you, or chances are there's likely someone at the front desk when you walk in who says, "Oh, you're new here. Let me show you around." They show you around the space so you get to see what is in it, where things are, how to move about, how to operate. Along the way, you're introduced to others within that space. So you're immediately being connected to humans face to face, and you're feeling more comfortable with the other people in that space. You're trained on the tools that are around, the literal equipment. They'll show you how to use it safely so you feel confident when you step into that space as to how to engage. And again, all while probably having a friend or partner or a mentor there right by your side. And soon you'll see physical transformation and you'll feel like, wow, my efforts here are really paying off. That's an incredible onboarding experience. And while, yes, that is in person, that's IRL physical locations, you should try to emulate that in your community. When people join SPI Pro, we show them around the space with a digital virtual tour of our community space. We introduce them to others on our community call as quickly as we can, or within the forum, even if we can. People will often introduce themselves. They'll say, "This is my business. This is what I do." And we'll say, "Wow, you've got to meet this person because they serve a very similar audience." We train them on the tools in our virtual tour or in any of the tutorials that we have. Like, hey, here is how you manage your notifications here. Or, hey, here is how you make this type of post. You need to show people how to do the behavior that you expect them to do. And our admins, our mods, are the friend, partner, or mentor in the space. You'll see me there. You'll see Tony. You'll see Jill. You'll see Known. We're the people showing you around the space and trying to make you feel comfortable. And we hope that by doing so and showing you how to leverage the community forum and our events, you'll start to see transformation in your business, or at least in how you feel, your confidence level. And that may even change the way that you think about yourself. The goals of onboarding, in my opinion, remind them why they're here early and often. Your community should have a very specific purpose for why it exists, who it helps, how it helps them. All along the way in onboarding, as things may feel awkward for a new member, remind them why they're here. You're here for this type of transformation. Try to make them feel comfortable in your onboarding. Make them feel as if they are welcomed and as if people want to hear from them. And when they do post, make them feel as if that is appropriate behavior and it's appreciated, and try to help them, show them that they can get results by posting. And the biggest North Star question that I can give you is try to answer the question of now what, until they achieve some level of transformation or have some experience of, wow, this space is awesome. And what I mean by this is literally take a customer journey in their shoes. And each step of the process, it should be obvious. Now, what do I do? If I land on the page to join and I want to join, how do I do that? It should be obvious to join, how to join if I want to. Once I join, what do I do next? Now what? Okay, you want me to create my profile? Great. I made my profile. Now what? Now read our guidelines. Now take our virtual tour. Okay, I did that. Now what? Now introduce yourself. Tell us about who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, I did that. Now what? Now RSVP for our kickoff event. Answer that question as over and over and over again, as many times as you can, until they feel like, wow, this place is special. This is different. I feel so comfortable here. I've had such a warm welcome. This is amazing. Get them on that road to transformation.
I can't tell you how many times I've joined things where they kind of just throw you in and they're like, okay, go. It's like, I don't know what to do next, or I'm just super overwhelmed, which this is a comment that you'll see in a lot of communities. It's just they get in there and they're super overwhelmed. But if you can help them one step at a time, hey, there's a lot of things over there. No, we're going down this hall over here because this is what's next. You're guiding them along the way. And I love how the team has used Circle in a way to help create that sort of guidance, right? As people come in, it's just so great. Here's some now what's that we answer along the way inside of our onboarding process.
I covered a lot of these, so I just wanted to flash them up on the screen. But as you're thinking about your onboarding process, these are a lot of the ways that you can answer that question of, now what do I do to get to the point of transformation? Couple screenshots here, and then we'll get into Q&A. This is our SPI Academy community. And when somebody joins one of our live cohort-based courses, our boot camps, we drop them into the Heroic Online Courses space group, which is specifically for students who are in the Heroic Online Courses bootcamp. When you land here, the first thing you're going to see is this post from Pat answering the now what. Well, first you're going to read this post from Pat about what to do. In this post, Pat says, here is the now what. Here's literally what to do next. From here, head over to the schedule and make sure to save our live sessions on your calendar. Our kickoff is May 17th. You do that and you're directed to introduce yourself. Sometimes we even have a video. This is what I want to show here. Sometimes we even have a video that accompanies a text to literally show you and tell you and welcome you. Here's where you are. Here's what we do here. Here's that help. Then we direct you to introduce yourself. We say, create a new post. Here is how to introduce yourself, to remove that kind of question of like, well, what's a good introduction? How should I introduce myself? What should I talk about? We try to make that easy. We also say, if you want to do a video intro, you should use a tool called loom.com. And when we have that post, then I will come in with my introduction, answering those questions and showing what a video introduction looks like, because I'm trying to set the precedent and the not expectation, but to show people what it looks like to do a video intro. And I try to do it just from my webcam, make it feel natural. So it's not like professional in a studio. You can record this from your phone if you want. And that has a result of often encouraging other people to do their own video intros as well. And then I'll jump in and like that and comment on it to encourage other people seeing this, like, yes, we love video intros. Thank you for doing this. And lastly, something I love about Circle that you can do if you're a little bit strained, I would encourage you when people join to shoot them a direct message manually and welcome them personally. But if you do want to automate it, you can automate it, which I do in the Tweet 100 Circle community, saying basically, I automated this message so I can ensure you got it in a timely manner. But this is my personal account. So if you have any questions, just reply to me. And when you have a minute, please go introduce yourself. So that's onboarding. I know I covered a lot of ground there, but
That's great, Jay.
Hopefully that inspires you to answer now what and get people moving.
Absolutely perfect. Jay, thank you so much. And again, I encourage those who are watching live right now to ask questions. Los Morano says, this is so cool. Very valuable information to level up your business. Thank you. I appreciate that. There's also some conversation here about specifically branding of a community, right? How might you approach the brand of the community? Is it just the same name as your website and your brand elsewhere, or do you call it something different? What are your thoughts on, naming your space there?
I have some evolving thoughts here. So I'll tell you how I'm thinking about it now, with the asterisk that I may change my mind.
Sure.
But I do think it's a good idea to name your community something that is not just your name. Like, I would not create the J. Klaus community probably, and you probably wouldn't necessarily create the Pat Flynn community. The value of having a name, even if it can be your brand name, or it can be in its own name entirely if you don't have a brand name to associate it with. It gives you something in your other day-to-day life and efforts to refer to by name. It'd be kind of weird for me to be like, in my podcast and say, by the way, if you haven't joined the J. Klaus community yet, like, that feels uncomfortable to me. I wouldn't do that. It feels a lot better to be like, hey, if you haven't joined our Creative Elements listener community, if I want to attach to my podcast or something like that. Names also open the door to create kind of a special name for your members. SPI Pro is what we have in Pro, and we call members of SPI Pro pros. So all the time, I can't tell you how often in video or in posts, I'll start something and say, hey, pros.
Yeah.
And that gives them an identity to grasp onto. So now they talk to each other and like, oh, you're a pro? I'm a pro. They wouldn't be like, oh, you're a J. Klaus community member? I am too. Like, you see how it plays forward. So having a name like that is helpful. The Tweet 100 social club, that challenge, this is a free challenge on Twitter. Somebody else in the community referred to other people as hundies. And I was like, hundies, that's interesting. I'm just going to adopt that. And now that's just like a rallying cry or a word that we can all use to refer to each other. And that's powerful.
That's so cool. Lady Rachel King here says, hey, Jay, you rock. You're doing amazing. Jillian says the Jillian community is totally happening, though. I can see that for sure. Amazing Mr. Jesse says, what is a good way to ask people to join a paid community without feeling salesy? There's a number of different aspects of this. I'll go first, Jay, and I'd love to hear your thoughts too. To me, this idea of feeling salesy about something has always come when I'm not completely confident in the thing that I'm selling. If I know 100% that what I'm selling is actually of value, and perhaps in order to get to that point, I have to either help somebody get a result with that thing first, or speak to a lot of people about it first, or run some alpha members or beta members through it first to get to that point. That way you don't have to sell as hard to the super fans, for example, who get in there first, but they can help you determine that this thing is of value, such that when you are promoting and talking about this thing, when you genuinely speak to what this might offer somebody, it never feels salesy at all. In fact, it just becomes a natural conclusion to the service that you're offering to them, right? And so I think that in another way, even asking questions and getting a person to almost like Inception, where a person goes, what I've been missing is just like a community of people who just understand me and get me. Oh, wow. Well, actually, we have that. Let me tell you a little bit more about it, right? When you can get a person to understand that this is what has been missing versus, hey, you might not know you need this, but I'm going to ram it down your throat. That's where it starts to feel like, well, you're trying to fit maybe a square peg in a round hole, and that's not going to, always turn out very well.
Yeah. I would say Mr. Jesse, very fun name. Amazing Mr. Jesse, by the way. It's an amazing name. Amazing Mr. Jesse. I would say the reframe that's really helped me is I don't ask anything of anybody. I don't push anything on anybody. I simply make the opportunity available, which is basically like very, like the opportunity is open to you. This is how, matter of fact is the thing I want to say. Very matter of factly, this membership exists, this opportunity exists. Here's how you would join if you would like to. And if you do, I'm excited to see you there. There's a certain like quiet confidence that comes with that people hear and they feel like, oh, you're not pushing me to do this. You know what? I do want to do that. I'm glad you reminded me of that. The reality is with anything that you sell or make available, people are going to need to hear about it multiple times. A lot of times, I mean, beyond your like super fans, beyond your early adopters, your beta group, people who are kind of on the fence, who could be persuaded to go versus not go, they're going to need to hear about it a lot. So it's more about just like reminding people that the opportunity exists. And if they want to join, they can. And here's how to do so.
Lovely answer. Let's see. We got Renee here says, I'm creating a writing community. Fantastic. A lot of writers often feel very lonely and want to get support and get inspiration from others. I love that. I'm creating a writing community where we write together, and there are a few competitors out there, and they take a price from $19 to $99 per month. I do not know what to take for myself. You know, this question of, you know, looking at competitors, that can be very helpful, right? To gauge sort of what the market might be paying. But at the same time, it can also pigeonhole you into some, like forcing yourself into something like perhaps your writing community might be something that a person would be happy to pay, you know, $500 a month for, because they're getting incredible access that they couldn't get anywhere else. So I would be very careful with like looking at what competitors are paying. I would pay attention to, what do competitors' costs come with? What's the value or what's the promise with what they have? And then how might you be able to maybe add even more value, or where might your offerings lie in between there? So that's where I would start. Really pay attention to your own positioning and what value you have to offer. Jay, how would you approach the competitors and what they might be offering and what they might be charging versus what you might charge for community?
I agree with you that I tend to look at the value proposition and see how my intended value proposition aligns versus not. Like, it would be very easy to look at what they offer and say, I'm going to offer the same things, but you should probably think to yourself, like, sustainably, what am I excited about offering as my value proposition? Is that more than what they're offering or less? If it's the same or if it's less, you probably don't want to like aggressively undercut them. In the short term, that might be helpful to get some new members, but what that might lead to is to some hostile sort of price wars among competitors that becomes kind of a race to the bottom. So the good thing, if you're looking at this type of member pays anywhere from $19 to $99 per month across these different competitors, I look at that as validation that people are charging at least $99 or up to $99 per month right now. But I rarely encourage people to look at a monthly fee. Definitely not under $10, but probably not under $20 either, because I don't see a lot of people going upstairs and opening the drawer and finding their wallet to make a $19 purchase. It almost feels like frustrating to even go through that effort for something that might be kind of an impulse buy. But also, on the same point, $19 per month might sound more to people than $240 per year. And it's basically the same price, right? So if it's going to be that low, you might want to actually charge on a different pricing cadence and use that as your differentiator. Just ideas, Renee. But we shared this earlier in the recording, and you might want to click on the link and watch where we talked about that. This is such a art rather than science. It comes down to kind of knowing your people and how their minds work. And I could make a case for any price point within that range. You know, so there's gonna be some discovery to happen from conversations and looking at your value proposition and thinking about what that price feels like to your typical member.
Love it. Thank you. And that also answers via John Doe's question, how much should I charge? We have at the, I think 54 minutes in, or 54 minutes ago, we talked about pricing. So you can check that out for sure. Amazing Mr. Jesse says value over price drop, like a mic drop. Let's see. The Leadership Project says, would like feedback on this. My plan is to have a paid community at the end of my 8-week course. This way, each member has a shared experience on the path to the community and join as an alum. Do you think that's a good idea? I definitely think that's a great idea. I mean, to have that shared experience, especially, we do something similar with our boot camps, which are, yes, a little bit more interactive up front, but then people remain friends and they stay friends. They've still continued to remain friends and meet with each other even after that. And to have the ability to make that even easier for people to do after the fact, Absolutely. I think that would be an amazing thing to do. And that would be the time at the end of that 8-week program to mention this or launch it. I don't know about you, Jay, but I think that maybe bringing that community in at some point earlier before the course ends might be really cool and interesting to have people be able to share ideas and showcase things amongst each other, and then bring that group continually into some paid membership after. What do you think?
Yeah, the leadership projects. I love this frame. We've landed in a good place on this, which was like good assumptions that seemed to work out for us this year. And the way that we do it here at SPI, we have 6 to 8 week bootcamp courses as well. We do have a community forum space within the SPI Academy, our course community, specifically for bootcamp students. But towards the end of that experience, we tell them, hey, when this is over, you'll still have access to this space with your peers, but we as a team are no longer dedicating resources to this space. We kind of aggressively lean into the time-bound nature of boot camps and say our part in this experience ends at 8 weeks. Because what I see a lot of cohort-based course communities doing right now is they will basically, everyone who's ever gone through the course are in this massive community that they think of as an alumni community. And that has an increasing and ongoing maintenance cost as well. The more people that come in through the course, you are just giving a lot of time and attention to them. It makes more sense, in my opinion, to have this time-bound experience, whether it's 6, 8 weeks or whatever. You have 8 weeks here, it sounds like. At the end of that, say, okay, now this is over. We do have this other offering. We do have this other opportunity to be a member of this community. Here's how to join, and introduce that at the end of that experience, as Pat said. And I think that does work very well, because it allows people who don't want that to gracefully and successfully step away from that experience and say, I did it. Mission accomplished. I'm done. And feel that sense of completion. Some people may say, I like that. I want more of that. Sounds like I can get more of that type of experience over here in this community.
Perfect. I think that takes us to the end of our Q&A today, and went a little over the 1.5 hour mark to make sure we answered those questions. So really great session today. Again, Open Circle 1 and 2 are linked to in the description. I'd recommend you check those out if you haven't already. We would love to invite you to apply for SPI Pro. If you go to smartpassiveincome.pro, you can go in and fill out that application. We could see if it's a good fit. And Jay and the team will make sure to keep an eye on that, as we are currently opening enrollment. Actually, I think enrollment's open as we speak right now, so we can fit you in. Just make sure, we want to make sure it's the right fit. So again, smartpassiveincome.com/pro. And if you're interested in using Circle, obviously we're big fans of Circle. We used it in all of our examples here. We're super fans of it. In fact, you can go to smartpassiveincome.com/circle, which is our affiliate link. We do get a little kickback if you do go through that link. But we know it'll support you, and the team over there is just absolutely amazing. And they're always innovating. They're always doing new things. We feel very blessed because we get early access to a lot of things up front, and we get to test and experiment. And this is why we're going to continue to do these open circles with you. We're going to have more topics and things down the road. And as new features come out and whatnot, we'll be able to experiment and share some results with you sooner than maybe others. So Jay, any final words here for the community builders who are in the house?
Nope. Thanks, everybody. As Pat said, enrollment for SPI Pro is open right now. That's a happy coincidence, more so than anything that we planned. But if you want to experience our onboarding process, our invitation process, we will look at those applications that come in this week and invite folks in who pass the application, which you likely will if you're watching this and interested in this. So go to smartpassiveincome.com/pro, put in your application, and we would love for you to join this Q4 21 cohort before Q1 22 happens in February.
Yes. Jay, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you, Tony, who's been helping out behind the scenes as well and in the chat. Also, Jillian, and I think Jonathan perhaps was in there, and a few others too. Anyway, thank you all so much for being here, participating. And again, check out the other open circles that are linked to in the description below, and we'll see you at SPI Pro, smartpassiveincome.com/pro. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Have a
everybody.
great day. Happy holidays.